Hello again, I am Blunty. So, with Strange New Worlds 3 episodes deep now, people's opinions on the show, like exactly how Star Trek it even is compared to the heavy criticism that Discovery got for not feeling, looking, or sounding, or playing out like what some would call real Star Trek should and could be. And in my own opinion, and in the majority of Trekkies, it seems to me, from just anecdotal point of view, of just scrolling through the hashtags on Twitter and somewhat more acutely in reading the comments to my own ongoing episode by episode reviews, it seems most people are pretty satisfied, if not ecstatic, that Strange New Worlds does indeed feel like a proper Trek show, in the spirit, in the vibe, and in the theme of the pre-J.J. Abrams and Kurtzman era of Trek. But even among those who are enjoying it, there's been some ongoing concern about breaking lore and continuity errors and other inconsistencies from what we'd expect from a show set 10 years before the original series and Kirk's Enterprise as we know it. In the first version of the notes for this video, I went on a couple of big long side rants about some couple of specific examples, the transporters and replicators and holographics and things like that. And maybe I'll spin those out to their own vids, but I got a bit sidetracked, so I took them out of this bit. But right now, I want to focus on one of the funner ones, rather than one of the ones that gets people's panties all twisted and starts arguments let's just be joyful with this one, all right? All joy, all the time. So in that spirit, I want to share with you my very favorite Star Trek story about a very weird and particular bit of lore and the behind-the-scenes mystery and joy created by it. So yeah, my favorite behind-the-scenes bit of Trek trivia, I suppose. Because there is one continuity issue that always makes me smile, unlike a lot of other continuity issues, and it's the uniform. Now, uniforms in Trek are annoying. Every new show has its own signature uniform, even if it is set in the exact same time period as the other shows alongside of it, and this makes no sense. For an entity like Starfleet that uses a military organizational system, even if it's not in the purest sense a military as we would recognize it, there should be much tighter consistency with the uniforms. But it's a TV show, and each show needs its own visual identity, especially if it's running concurrent with the other shows in the same branding at the same time on people's TVs. So most Trekkies don't get too hung up on this issue. And you can headcanon it away with explanations a lot of the time, say different uniforms for different mission types or postings. DS9 versus TNG, for example. Well, one's an exploratory ship, the other's a space station. Different uniforms for that job. Easy enough. Discovery's crew versus the Enterprise crew in the exact same series, in the exact same time, standing side by side on ships doing much the same exploratory and scientific duty. That one's a bit harder, especially when the uniforms are so dramatically different. I mean, even between TNG, Voyager and DS9, which all happen in the same time period, give or take a few years, there's at least some consistency in the design language of those uniforms. Anyway, but before we take a bigger bite out of the meat of this, which uniform design is your favourite? I've always liked the strong black silhouette of Voyager's. Seems slimming. But here's the behind-the-scenes story about the uniforms that I love and why I smile at the new Trek uniforms of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So, there's this bloke called Robert Blackman, and from the 3rd season of TNG, he is the costume designer for the show, and he stuck around for the next 16 years of Star Trek as well. Now, Star Trek, the original series, had a look that we all instantly recognize. It's iconic at this stage. Star Trek The Next Generation had its own iconic look as well, sometimes kindly referred to as space pajamas. The idea was, in this amazing technologically advanced future, dumb old mechanical clothing fastening technologies like buttons and zippers were functionally obsolete. We had better ways to do that these days. So the command was, no visible zippers on the uniforms. The real uniforms, of course, had zippers and such, but they were hidden with some clever costuming tricks and occasionally some clever camera work. Oh, also Roddenberry commanded that, space-age fabric should not wrinkle, so the uniforms were made from tight and stretchy fabric, so they always looked taut and smooth and wrinkle-free as possible. Even pockets were outlawed. No zippers, no buttons, no pockets. Seems a bit impractical, but the first versions of the next-gen uniforms were also notoriously uncomfortable to wear. Patrick Stewart in particular tells a story about how his own chiropractor suggested that he could sue the production for making him wear a costume that caused him so much back pain for up to 15 hours a day. Jonathan Frakes has a similar story. He's made claims to having deliberately ripped more than one of them while taking it off at the end of the day in frustration and kind of a little protest. I'm sure the costuming department really loved you, Jonathan, for doing that. They were stinky too. The lycra and spandex blend wasn't super good at breathability, so being hot and stinking cloud of BO was also a bit of an issue on the set. In the third season, though, Robert Blackman came on board and redesigned the uniforms. But he was still constrained by the rules inherited from Gene Roddenberry's clothing commandments. So he was barred by the production team from even thinking about visible buttons and zippers, and if he even said the word Velcro out loud, he was beaten with a rotting trout. And I really like the season 3 onwards uniform redesigns that he did. I think I like his design for Voyager's uniform even better. Like I said, a bit slimming. But he also did the uniforms for Star Trek First Contact, Deep Space Nine, Insurrection, and Nemesis. All of which he was still restrained by the Roddenberry Zippers Directive. Oh, I also liked the engineering jacket with the little tool pockets they gave B'Elanna for a season of Voyager to help hide Roseanne Dawson's real-life pregnancy belly from the camera. Number one, it's a very practical choice for an engineer just to have tool pockets. Number two, it's fun watching all the ways they carefully shoot these episodes to hide her big old baby bump. And number three, they kind of had to break the no pockets rule to make the jacket seem like a practical choice for the character as an engineer, rather than a crafty little cheat for the production crew to hide the pregnancy. Oh, and the same goes for the all too rarely seen, in my opinion, Picard jacket, which was made at the suggestion of Patrick Stewart, he wanted to make the captain stand out more from the rest of the crew. That was his reasoning. In real life, of course, we know that Patrick just was getting real sick of the uncomfortable uniforms, and of course the Picard maneuver, and realizing that the show and his presence was so popular now, he'd probably make some demands for his own comfort without, risking losing the job. But when Blackman was assigned to design the uniforms for pre-Starfleet, pre-TOS Star Trek sequel series called Enterprise, Blackman saw his escape clause to get out from under the laceless boot of Roddenberry's ghost at long last. Enterprise was set in a more technologically primitive time compared to even the original series, and everything about the show's design was reflecting that. Blackman, in interviews later, described his joy at finally being unrestricted with his design choices. Now, he could have more choices. He could include zippers and buttons and pockets. And that's why this is my favorite thing about this story. After so many years of being restricted in his design choices, in his creativity, and what must have been a dozen long years of a building resentment and frustration at the whole thing, Blackman just went, you know what? Zippers on everything. Zippers on every damn thing. If there's a surface, I'm going to zipper on it. Zippers for everybody. Zippers on the arms, on the legs, on the chest. If they had hats, I'd make the whole damn hat out of zippers and pockets. In an interview, what he actually said was, we're going to see closures. I had spent, at that point, 12 years trying to make everything look like you didn't know how they got into it, that they were just wearing it. So I said, there's going to be zippers, there's going to be pockets, and there will be things for equipment. And he damn well did it. With Enterprise's more primitive setting and with everything looking much more rustic, more basic and more practical and sort of engineered, the uniforms themselves took inspiration from flight suits that we are more familiar with in our day and age, from pilots and astronauts and stuff. And there were in fact 13 zippers in each and every uniform. Most of them weren't even functional. There was no pocket behind it. They were just zippers for the sake of being a zipper because there could be a zipper there. Eat it, Roddenberry. And I find that a little act of rebellion and freedom so wonderfully joyful. I love this story. Again, in interviews, Blackman said those fake pockets could never hold anything. They were a zipper to no pocket. But it was just one of those things that I wanted to put in. Beautiful. And while Pike and crew had clearly visible zippers on their uniforms when they first appeared on Discovery, they're not on the standard uniform on their own show now. But we still see zippers on some official uniforms. The jackets have them. Nurse Chapel, who is not Starfleet and is instead on civilian exchange, is not in a standard uniform therefore, but has a zipper on hers. We see Una at one point in a uniform that seems to be somewhere between the short-lived Scott uniform from Next Gen and a dress uniform. It has a zipper as well. Transporter Chief Kyle has another variant uniform, the significance of which I'm not sure of yet. Perhaps it's a difference between enlisted and commissioned service officers, but his has a zip as well. And of course, Uhura, a cadet, also wearing a uniform with a zip, presumably the cadet uniform. Zippy, zippy, zippy doodah. So, while the main costume is now zipless, perhaps thematically to bring it closer in look and style to what the original series was, we can pretty easily headcanon this as a transitional period in time. The zipper is about to be obsolete. It's starting to disappear from the uniforms. We are in fact witnessing a turning point in the Trek universe, the extinction of the zipper. Blackman's rebellious zipper orgy on the Enterprise uniforms is one of my favorite production stories behind Star Trek. I love that the man got to do that, and I can't help but smile at any time I notice a zipper on an official uniform in Star Trek. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you find this story as joyful as I do. Thanks as always to the I'll try that again in English for those of you who speak it. Thanks again to the patrons scrolling up above, whose above me on support I appreciate very, very much. I am Blunty. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time. Live long and prosper, and learn to speak without stammering so much.